Hello, my chicklets. Thank you for stopping by. I'm so excited for today's story. It is actually my least popular story on AO3, but I think that's just because I don't know how to tag stories well, so this one's not easy to find unless you're looking for it. Before we get into that, I do want to remind everyone, if there's a story you would like me to read, you can always offer me suggestions. The link is down in the description. You can also commission me to record a story for you. Remember, requested stories are not guaranteed to be read, but commissioned stories are. Without further ado, let me read to you A Smile to Get You Through. Though the night cast shadows that made the forest almost impossible to walk in, the day was not much better. There was no peace in the light, not when shadows were cast along the floor, twisting with the movements of the sun. Each noise from the forest creatures, each skitter and chirp made his skin crawl. Patton only hoped to get through the forest, to reach the city on the other side where he was promised safety. He had been told by someone else that the path was safe to travel. He had a feeling that was a lie. Pulling his blue hood over his head, a reflection of the sky he could barely see amongst the heavy foliage, Patton continued to move forward, trying to find any way to distract himself from the echoings of the creatures around him. Maybe if he whistled a tune, the shadows would not feel so dark and threatening. He tried that, whistling softly as he walked through the trees, carefully stepping around roots and brush. His cheery tune didn't hide the creaking of the forest's trees in the wind or the skittering of animals on the floor. If anything, it put him more on edge, adding a haunting melody that echoed through the emptiness. His cheerfulness returned to him as nothing but a hollow shell of what it once was. But Patton pushed on. "Well, what do we have here?" asked a deep, gravelly voice, accompanied by the shifting of leaves. Despite how vigilant Patton had been, this man snuck up on him, suddenly appearing from what seemed like thin air. "Cute men such as yourself shouldn't be alone on days like this." Patton probably shouldn't be walking alone in the forest. He knew that, but he hadn't really had much choice. There was no one to go with him, but he needed to get out of the city. He had been asked to teach, something he loved to do, but they needed him right away. The forest was the quickest route, albeit not the safest. Patton didn't want to explain all of that to this man, though, so he just smiled softly, tried to hide his nerves behind his kindness. "It's such a lovely day for a walk, though. The air isn't too hot or cold, and the sun is nicely shaded behind the trees." He ignored how the shadows put him on edge, how a slight breeze sent a shiver down his spine. The man seemed to know, though. He smirked, taking a step closer as Patton grabbed the straps of his backpack. His knuckles grew white from the strain. "You're right. It is a beautiful day, but it's also the day when the veil between this reality and the mystical is thinnest. Today is the day when monsters come out to hunt and play. Something like you would be too delicious a treat to pass up. You don't want that, do you?" Patton swallowed hard, hoping to push down his fear with the rising bile. "I'm sure not everything we think is a monster actually is. Maybe they are all misunderstood." Patton believed there to be some truth in that. He believed that some things were just misunderstood. He wasn't sure he wanted to figure that out while he was alone, though. He wished someone had been able to go with him. It was hard doing this by himself. The man looked at him. It was such a patronizing tone, and it made Patton feel even more on edge. When the man started walking around him as if he were some kind of prey, Patton felt the fabric of his backpack cut into his hands. He was terrified. There was no other word he could use, but he continued to stand his ground, hoping that soon this other man would be done. Patton wasn't one for confrontation, and he wasn't a runner. He didn't know how to escape other than to just be kind. "You're adorable and naive. I'm hoping one of the other monsters doesn't get to you before you make it to your destination." Something in the way he spoke made Patton shiver. There was something more, like if he made it out of this, he still wouldn't be safe. "But I guess I'll have to wait and see." He took a step away from Patton, his eyes slowly running down Patton's body before reconnecting. They looked at each other for a long second. A smirk played on the man's lips. "Good luck, little mouse. Let's see if you can make friends with the monsters who want to eat you." With that, he disappeared into the brush, and Patton was certain he had seen the man there one moment and then suddenly gone. That couldn't be real, though. Humans didn't just disappear. Patton took in a slow, deep breath before turning on his way, continuing through the forest. He just had to make it to the other side. It didn't matter if a strange man was threatening him. He would deal with any monsters the same way he dealt with people. Kindness. Besides, there's no such thing as monsters. He reminded himself. It was a lackluster attempt. After what he had just gone through, he wasn't sure how much truth there was to that statement. Sure, Patton had never seen a monster, but that didn't mean they didn't exist. The scenery certainly gave him a lot to think about, and he wasn't sure that the creepiness of the forest was just because he was alone. Maybe there were monsters in the forest. Maybe he was in more danger than he initially thought, but if that were the case, he really was going to need to learn to befriend them. He wasn't a fighter. This was the only way he was going to make it out of the forest alive. Straightening up and putting all of his strength into his legs, Patton nodded to the air. There was nothing a bit of kindness couldn't fix. "Bring it on," he whispered. Thank you all for listening. Again, this story was a smile to get you through. I do hope y'all enjoyed it. Like I said, this is my least popular story on AO3, but again, I think it's just because of the tags. Let me know what you think, and I hope y'all have a wonderful day.